Unoriginal idea or blatant cash grab? It's Paranormal Entity. Welcome to Rotted, review of the day, and today we're going to be taking a spoiler-free look at the 2009 movie Paranormal Entity, not Activity. Apologies for the damp hair. I am recording this just after the shower on my way to getting ready for work. Regardless, I saw this movie last night, and typically I really wouldn't ordinarily have seen it. I had seen the title card in my Netflix queue for quite some time, and always ignored it because I typically don't watch movies like this, as in something unique and successful comes out, a box office success that whatever style it's doing has changed the game, and then you get immediately, especially if that original style was low budget, immediately you get copycats. And this was a prime example of it. The box art looked identical to Paranormal Activity. The filming style looked identical to Paranormal Activity. It came out just a year later. It had the name. It was obviously similar. It just didn't seem like something that appealed to me. However, I queried my friends yesterday on what should I review today, and somebody mentioned Paranormal Entity, and really, that okay, and then several other friends chimed in response to him, saying they loved it. So, all right, gonna give it a whirl, and I did. I watched it last night, came up here, recorded an entire review of it, and then realized once I was actually exporting it that my air conditioner was on the entire time and it sounded terrible. So this morning, shower, getting ready for work, knocking out the review, this time with the AC off. So let's just go ahead and get right into the scoring system of this, because you might infer from the intro that I did to this video that I didn't like the movie, and that's actually not the truth. I just recognize it for what it is, and I'm not really willing to let the movie apologize for it, if that's even its goal. But let's get into the categories here. As always, 5 different categories, each worth up to 20 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the first category is plot / subtext, but there's not really a whole lot of subtext in this one. The plot, I'm going to try and make a review that stands on its own. I'm not going to be comparing Paranormal Entity to Paranormal Activity, or at the very least I'm going to try and do that as little as possible. What I think that objectively I need to review it on its own merit, what it presented to the screen as if no other films ever existed. And the plot on this one was a mother and her late teens, early 20s son and daughter lost their father a year prior in an automobile accident, and they made some loose, amateurish attempts to contact him, and in doing so, strange things started happening over the course of the next year, and the help that they were seeking out in terms of a paranormal investigator / psychic / whatever recommended to them that they document what's going on so that he is prepared when he is arriving to help. And that is where the movie starts, is them setting up the cameras to document what is going on in the house. And I actually thought that was actually a fairly decent premise. The thing about this fixed camera security system, CCTV kind of movie that Paranormal Activity started, is you're saving a ton of money on and effort on some technical aspects of the movie, i.e. filming and so on, but you're also giving yourself a whole lot of other headaches that enter into it. If you are working with actual fixed cams and you're recording things and you want to get multiple angles, then you're going through times 3 times 4 of your dailies to do editing, and more than that, you're also having to realistically come up with a viable, believable explanation why this family that is, it's not Big Brother or the real world, why this normal family is setting up cameras in every room of the house and recording them. And I thought this actually did a fairly good job of laying that written plotline groundwork. The complaint that I would have with the plot is that it really doesn't evolve from there. It doesn't have any major character development, plot development, anything like that. It's basically, here's the groundwork, we're going to hit play and put these people through the paranormal meat grinder. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I think it just doesn't make for the most compelling storyline for an hour and a half. So I gave this an 11 out of 20. I thought it was decent, and it was definitely better than I thought it would be. So, the intent of this movie is that's what I meant by I'm not going to let this movie apologize if it's even trying to. It's a cash grab. It absolutely is. It meant to copycat a successful franchise, or what became a franchise, and ride its coattails. And it did so. I have to imagine I saw Paranormal Entity on the Netflix queue for quite some time. I don't think it's there currently. I'm going to be providing a justwatch.com link on Paranormal Entity in the description below here, so that if it does wind up on a streaming service again, or it does wind up available to rent or buy, you can click there and find out where you can watch it. But considering that I saw it for so long, and its budget had to have been about $60 and a cup of coffees, I have to imagine it made some money. And more than that, it actually delivered a movie. It delivered a fairly solid, consistent horror movie. And, whether or not it was the greatest, I don't think it was the greatest, but it certainly wasn't bad. And typically that's what you get with these copycat movies. It's just a real stinker. And this wasn't. It was fairly solid. So I gave this a 19 out of 20. Not only did it set out to, or achieve what it set out to do, but I think it actually made a very passable, watchable movie in the process. The acting, I thought, was actually fairly decent. You really only saw 2 characters. There were 4 characters entirely within the movie, one of which was behind the camera most of the time. It was the brother, and he also directed the movie. So you mostly just heard his voice. The 4th character, without spoiling anything, you really didn't see until the very, very, very last bit of the movie. So principally, you just see the mother and the daughter, and that's where the performances are coming from. And I thought that they did a very good job, the daughter especially. This movie, and I said I wouldn't compare it to Paranormal Activity, I'm going to grant myself this one time. This movie dealt with themes that were more adult and traumatic than Paranormal Activity did, and by and large targeting the daughter. And I thought that she handled it very well on an acting level. She sold the performance very effectively, and you have this overarching theme within these type of movies, that as the demonic or paranormal presence is going throughout the movie, its goal is to wear the humans down and make them an empty shell of who they were at the start. And I thought that level of acting was pretty solid too. So I gave it a 14 out of 20. Again, so much better than I thought it would be when I started this movie. Technical. You may notice that this no longer says effects. It says technical. The reason for that is I want this whole channel to be malleable. If something's not working, I want to change it. I don't want to be so rigid in my template at the beginning that I never evolve. And I think this is one of those times. The problem that I was wandering into is, what if a horror movie does not rely on effects? I think effects are extraordinarily important to grade in a horror film when they choose to have it. But what if they don't? What if that's not like a budgetary decision? It's just how they chose to tell the story. And it felt like I was starting to encounter that with some movies, and it felt like I was having to unnecessarily ding them on a category that was not deserving, because it was more of an aesthetic storytelling choice on their part. So I would try to find other ways to grade it within the effects category, and ultimately where I landed was I'm going to be making, instead of effects, I'm going to be making technical categories. So things like effects are going to be a part of that. Special effects, CGI work, practical effects, set design, editing, sound design, all of that is going to be lumped into one thing and is now technical. The effects, if a movie chooses to have it and they don't work, if they look bad, if they pull me out of the immersion of the movie, it's going to get graded on that. If they don't have effects, then I'm going to be grading it on a lot of other aspects. So, technical. There were a few effects in here, but mostly it was camera work, quick pan, cut and redress, and quick pan back shots. And I think they probably spent a quarter of their budget on invisible fishing line. So, pretty basic stuff. And I will say that what was on the screen worked. There was nothing there that broke the immersion, and I think that all the technical stuff that they did, especially considering the budget and what they were going for, and how cheap they could have gone with it in terms of quality and effort, but didn't really hold back on that, I gave this a 15 out of 20. I thought it was actually pretty admirable. The fear quotient is the portion that I really didn't really click with. I gave it a 13 out of 20. That had some pretty good moments in it. There was nothing in there that really made my skin crawl or give me goosebumps, but they had some good technical moments in there that led to some good fear moments, in terms of they had some good long suspenseful times, and some of it yielded to a good jump scare at the end. Some of it didn't. Some of it just had no real conclusion to that suspenseful and sometimes overly long suspenseful moment. And as soon as the scene was over, it went to a fairly innocent scene, and then, oh, there's something, it got you, because it weren't. The timing and the rhythm that they worked the scares into was actually pretty darn decent. It just, for one reason or another, really didn't get me that bad. At no point did I jump, at no point did I get goosebumps, and at no point did the movie really stick with me. So I'm kind of torn on this one. Maybe, and this is the part about watching horror movies and being a horror fan, is who knows what will eventually cause you to have that level of fear while watching a movie. Maybe this would have worked in another day for me. Maybe if I wasn't watching it while having dinner and having the lights on, it would have been a totally different experience. But grading it just on how I saw it, how I thought, and recognizing that the rhythms worked, I'm going to give this a 13 out of 20 for a total score of 72 out of 100 points, which is far more than I thought I would ever have when I always saw the title card on my Netflix queue. So thank you for recommending that to me, and I would recommend it to other folks. If you like the Paranormal Activity movies, if you're willing to switch off that part of your brain that says that this is a cash grab, which it is, and just watch it on its own merit, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So we're going to go into more of a spoiler thing on the deep dive discussion, which will accompany this video. In the meantime, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.